This is James with Survivor Nurse Truck Talk, and in this video, we're going to talk about why the trucking industry is so stressful as it pertains to family and relationships. And we're going to go over some points that I think that you should consider as a truck driver. And especially at the end, we're going to give some solutions for you. So don't miss that. Watch the video through so that you can receive some good information out there for the trucking industry. One of the first things that can take place in the family or relationship is that there begins to be a strain on the relationship, and whether this is between your father, your mother, a brother or sister, or even an intimate partner, it certainly can create a strain for you. And this is because you start to miss birthdays, you start to miss events, and even holidays and important dates and meetings that you could have had, but you were out there trucking, getting things done. And so this can cause a strain in the family and also on a relationship. And so when we think about and dive deeper, it takes away quality time. And what we mean by this is that if you're trying to work and provide for your family in that sense, and now you don't have an opportunity to be at a certain occasion, and you don't have that time to spend with your partner per se, and it just starts to take away quality time. Another reason that the trucking industry is so stressful is because it can cause resentment. And maybe we don't really think about this. Resentment is not necessarily a hate, but it is an emotion that develops over time because it can cause a lot of stress on your body, on your mind, and you start to treat others differently, and people in the workplace, even your intimate partner, and you're building that resentment because you're not having your needs fulfilled. You're away from home, you're making a sacrifice out there on the road. So resentment is a very important one to be mindful of when you are out there trucking. Here's another one that is very common in the trucking industry. You have truck drivers that, including myself, as a truck driver, not making the right healthy habits as far as not eating correctly. And so they begin, or we can begin to gain weight, or our blood pressure can start to rise. And this is very important because if we neglect our health and we are just getting burgers and pizza and fries and all these things at these wonderful truck stops, over time that can cause health issues. So that's something to keep in mind why the trucking industry is so stressful. It can create that environment. And so bad habits can develop certainly in this kind of dynamic. Now that we have considered a few things why the trucking industry is so stressful, I want to now transition into relationships more specifically. Think about a job that you had and you were away for days, and maybe even now you're an over the road driver. Maybe even now you are just out so long, and that is taking away quality time from your partner, whether that is your wife, your girlfriend, or so on and so forth. And it can begin to build a mistrust. And what does that mean when you are long distance or having a long distance relationship and you are not purposely or intentionally making sure you are connected with your partner? That can cause a mistrust. I have heard so many times from other truck drivers that are over the road for weeks and maybe even months that have said that they have got a divorce because it has placed a lot of strain on their marriage. And I hear truck drivers talking about getting divorced and the relationship just dissolves. And so that's kind of scary if you're trying to maintain a relationship and still have a career in the trucking industry, because it can create mistrust if we are not intentionally doing things that can build trust. And so this is one to certainly keep in mind. Another important thing in an intimate relationship is making sure to have emotional connection, because emotional connection can deteriorate if we are not being proactive to build emotional connection. And what are some of those things that we can do? We will have some solutions here in a moment. And so now we can see that we are developing this idea why the trucking industry is so stressful when it comes to family and relationships. The truck driver is out there uh, doing work away from home. And I can remember in my Army days, in my 20s, I was definitely away from home for an extended period of time, and also having a deployment there towards the end of my Army career for a few years when I was younger. I can remember missing a lot of birthdays, holidays, and where I'm from, even barbecues are a wonderful thing that we do. Always missing that home cooked food, and certainly you can start to miss home. So some of the military guys, you truckers that are veterans and are military, understand what I'm talking about, because making a sacrifice certainly can cause other consequences, like having a marriage deteriorate, having a relationship just deteriorate or dissolve over time because being away from home a long time. So I hope that you're gaining value from some of what we are talking about in the trucking industry, why it is so stressful as it pertains to family and relationships. But now I want to talk about, as we develop this idea, what is the solution, or what are some solutions that we can consider in trying to keep intact our relationship? Well, I believe that one of the first things that we need to understand in our minds is that we need to create our own reality. And this means living on purpose. It's not making excuses why certain things are coming about. It's not becoming a victim to our circumstances. And what are some of those specific things that we can do? Well, I believe that we should have a proper plan, and that is, communicating properly with our partner that this is how we are going to maintain our relationship. I'm going to be out these 2-3 weeks, and we're going to, as we go into this next point, assure that we spend quality time one with another, because we can have very limited time, but what is more important is that we spend quality time. And that is doing things that you enjoy with each other, whether that is going to the movies and relaxing, eating some popcorn, whether that is just going out into nature or renting a cabin, or whatever things that you and your partner enjoy. Assure that it is quality time, because even if it's just a day or 2 days that you have time with your partner, it's very important to make sure that it is quality. Another couple of things to keep in mind is when a truck driver is away from home and their partner is, going through some things, or even the truck driver is going through some things, it's important to encourage each other and not to put each other down, so to speak, not blame one another, encourage one another, because that's going to uplift your energy, give you motivation. It's going to give you a platform to build from, instead of always yelling at each other, blaming each other for the dynamic that is being created of making the sacrifice of being away from each other. Encouragement is definitely something to apply with one another, and not constantly tearing each other down. Another factor or element that we should introduce is listening. Listening is a skill. It's not easy. It's not easy to hear your partner every single word they are saying and embrace it. And not that's really not the goal. The goal is to make sure that you understand your partner and having some good listening skills, because things can get really messy. And you and I both know when your partner does not feel understood. Practicing patience, that is another good quality to have. Just like when we are waiting in traffic for hours and hours, that is an act of patience. And just like we can get through that, we can get through this with our partner, practicing patience one with another. That is important because when you show an act of frustration and you react to whatever the situation is at hand, then that can just make everything worse. So let's try to practice patience with each other. Let's try to encourage one another. And especially if the stress is already because of a long distance relationship. This is the segment that I wanted to share with us in the trucking industry. I appreciate all you truck drivers making a sacrifice being away from home. It's not easy, I know. And make sure that we are living life on purpose, making a plan, creating our reality, and not being a victim to our circumstances. And easier said than done, I know, because of all the things that surround the trucking industry and all the strains that we have. But I know that it is possible if we decide to implement some of these discussions that we are having. This is James with Survivors Truck Talk. If you want to continue to enjoy this content concerning this subject we are addressing, please subscribe and don't forget to share if you find that this can help others.